In this video we are going to be talking about grass and whether your horse is able to eat short grass at all. Whether you always thought that long grass is bad for your horse. But first, before we talk about long grass, we have to talk about short grass. So what is short grass and what it does to your horse? What short grass is basically recovering grass after the grazing pressure. So it's been grazed and it's regrowing, which means it's very high in sugars. So it's all the young shoots coming out. So for your horse, it's a bit like going into a candy shop and eating there. So it's very sweet. So if your horse is prone to laminitis or colic, you are more likely to have that problem if you have short grass like behind me. Another thing is the pasture with short grass is very low in nutrients, in minerals. The reason is because the grass is very shallow rooted. So if you imagine the grass height above the soil is about, let's say like this, the root depth is similar root depth. That means that the plant is not able to get the nutrients and minerals from deeper down in the soil. It has to just get what is on the surface. So the mineral balance of such pasture is very poor. So this is what it does to your horse. So it's bad for him as it's high in sugars. And it's not just the laminitis and colic, it's also behavior problems. So the horse is more excitable and it has mood swings, so it's less reliable because of all the sugars. Yeah, it's a bit like if you had a child and it ate candy all day, it would be hyperactive. So it's the same with horses. What does short grass do to your pasture, so to your land? So it's also bad for your land. There are two reasons. One is there is very shallow root depth, which means that when it rains, the water only penetrates as deep as the roots are. So if you have got root depth only this, that's how far the water will penetrate. So the more it rains, the more chances are the water will sit on the top and not actually go down deep in the soil. So if you were to use a digger or a spade and dig deeper down, even if you dug like 50 centimeters, you might discover that the soil is dry deep down. So the water is not penetrating. Now the downside for that is you are going to have problems in droughts in summer, which means that your pasture will dry up very quickly and you won't have grass. You will also have problems in the winter when it's raining all the time and you can't have horse outside, otherwise you are creating mud and it's just the soil is not able to keep the horse above it and not poach the ground. Another thing that this short grass does is, this is a result of overgrazing. What is overgrazing? Overgrazing is when you have the animals on the pasture, when the grass is just regrowing and it grazes it again and it weakens it. So what happens, how it works, is that the grass is grazed, so it goes right down, and it has to use its reserves to regrow. Berryman uses energy from the sunshine for which it needs the green leaves. So if it's being stripped of the green leaves, it needs to use its own reserves in the stalks and in the roots. So it uses the reserves to regrow, to push the first young leaves through in order to harvest more sunshine to regrow, to continue regrowing. Now if it's grazed again, because the horse is present still here, then what is going to happen is just going to weaken the plant and eventually it will die. So you might have noticed that horses prefer certain areas of your pasture where they graze it right down, and certain areas they don't seem to graze very much. Now they have obviously preference to more palatable species, and certain types of soil are better for the plant, so it tastes better. So they migrate to those areas and preferentially graze those areas. But what it does is that it replaces the more palatable species with the less palatable ones, because the more palatable have died off as they have been overgrazed, and then there is less palatable species, and over time it can just become field of weeds, whether it's thistles, dock leaves, creeping weeds. So that's the worst case scenario when you are really migrating to the least palatable species that the horses don't eat. So the overgrazing also results in poor biodiversity. What that means is that there is less species of grasses and herbs, because some herbs and some grasses are just not able to survive the overgrazing pressure, so they die. So you have got only few species there, and each species has different rooting depth, and also each species needs slightly different minerals and nutrients, so there are slightly different nutritive properties of each grasses and herbs. So the more diverse the pasture is, the better it is for your horse. But if you are overgrazing, and that means there will be less biodiversity, less for your horse to choose from. So the overgrazing occurs not just when the horse is present here for a long time, and I mean long time is more than a few days, but also when the horse is returned to the pasture too early. So every species of plants recover at different times. Some recover much faster, some recover much slower, and if you want high biodiversity, you need to account for the species that recover much slower. So if you return the horse there after, let's say, 5 weeks, which hasn't been enough for the slower growing species, you are going to still continue overgrazing. So that's what short grass is. So let's have a look at what long grass looks like and what it does to your horse. So first, what is long grass? Now you can see me, I'm now in the field in the long grass. And long grass is basically fully expressed grass. Now it will depend on the time of year, what height that is, and also on the state of your pasture, how it's recovering on the soil, and many other factors. But the most important thing, it has had enough time to fully recover. So this is about 2.5, 3 months of regrowth behind me. Now we are now in middle of August, so we have had the main growing season, so that's already been and passed. So now we are end of summer and heading into the probably the September lush, as now we just got rain back again. The tall grass, what it does to your horse, firstly it's very biodiverse, so there are many different species of grasses here and herbs from which the horse can benefit. So it can choose based on its nutritional needs of the horse, which plants it can have, it can eat. So this grass here is much taller, it's fully expressed, so it's a big bunch of grass basically, and what it means is that it has very deep roots, so it's able to mine the nutrients and the water from deeper down. So the benefits of long grass is water penetration, so there is no water sitting on the surface. It can penetrate deep down because of the deeper roots, taller roots. So that's number one. Number two, you never have sweet grass here, so we never allow horses to graze the regrowing grass, which is very sweet. So you can soon learn what the grass does and how it behaves, how it regrows, and the nutritional curve of the grass, of the nutrient density, is when it's regrowing, it's sort of at the base, then it starts to increase in nutrient density up to the peak when it flowers, and then it starts decreasing as it sets seeds. And you probably know that not many animals like the seed heads. The seed heads are quite useful to reseed the pasture with more different species. So let's say this pasture has only certain species of grasses, but because we let the grasses flower, set seed, just depending on, because each grass has a different time of recovery, so we allow enough recovery to make sure that all of the grasses and all of the herbs are able to recover fully, which means that some species will set seed, but that's not a problem. It will get trampled down in the soil, so it will feed the soil and it will reseed the pasture. In season, the tall grass will be flowering, so it will be actually very tall. In winter, it will be more a bit, now we've done the most grass growth in the year, so now we are heading more towards the wintry expression of grasses, which is just leaves. The best thing for your horse is tall grass because it's biodiverse, it's nutrient dense, and it's very good for your pasture, for your land management. So what it does is that it brings, so it creates more habitat for wildlife, so there is more insect, which allows birds and small mammals to have food, so it's source of food, as well as it's good for your horse in terms of nutrition. For the land, you never struggle with drought and wet seasons in the drought, because you are sort of able to penetrate with the water deep down in the soil, and you refill this sponge which is down deep down, allowing the water to then be used when it's most needed, when it dries out again. The best natural thing you can feed to your horse, and it saves you money and time, because we are just growing the most forage we can for the winter, so that we can use less feed, hard feed and hay. If you like the videos, have a look at our website regreentheearth.org, where you will find more information and more videos, as well as you can download documents if you want to try and start yourself to manage the pasture naturally. Thanks for watching.